Department of Education policy, warning cards are given to school kids over the age of 16 caught with small amounts of marijuana. This academic year, 183 marijuana warning cards have already been issued. While parents are notified of the infraction, nothing remains on a student's permanent record. The department's softened pot policy among students has led to a 192% plunge in weed-related New York City Police Department summonses in the last 3 months of 2018. Here with the discussion, we've got the author of Reefer Sanity, 7 Great Myths About Marijuana, Kevin Sabet. He's screened left, and Dan Goldman, the founder of New York Cannabis Alliance and the host of Marijuana Today podcast. Guys, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Kevin, you have a problem that now in New York City public schools, if kids are caught with pot, they don't get in trouble, really.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, today's marijuana is not your Woodstock weed. It's 10 to 30 times stronger. It's being put in vaporized cartridges, the jewels, and it's an epidemic. It affects your developing brain. You know, the brain is developing until age 30. So, look, I don't want to throw a kid in jail or expel him for a year if he has a joint in his pocket. But we have to get serious about marijuana. Many of these kids need help. This is a health issue, and we should not be encouraging in this environment more drug use.
Dan?
I mean, I agree. We want to discourage adolescents from using cannabis, but the way to do that is to give them actual, honest information based on science and facts and evidence, and allow young people to make healthy decisions, as we've seen when...
Well, when you listen to his science, it would scare people from using pot.
Well, that's what we want. We want to delay the onset of adolescent use, but we want to do that by giving them honest information, not the dare propaganda that people like Kevin and his colleagues in the Prohibitionist Office of National Drug Control Policy promote. Young people, when they're given accurate information, as we've seen in legal states like Colorado and Washington, reduce their use. Youth rates drop when states legalize marijuana.
Actually, so this is like Big Tobacco's dream. Big Tobacco, Altria, is getting into the marijuana business, and actually youth use, and especially 18 to 25-year-old use, has gone way up in legalized states. Today's marijuana is linked to mental illness, 3 times the risk of suicide, schizophrenia, and psychosis. I don't want to give him scare tactics, but every major medical association agrees that we should discourage use and not legalize. But we need to slow the train down.
Here's the thing. We're talking about a discipline problem in our schools. It's not just that they're breaking a local rule. Pot is still a federal felony.
Well, and it hurts your ability to learn in school, and it hurts other kids' ability to do that. This isn't about a couple of kids, you know, in the boys' room passing around a joint. We're talking 90% THC in these cartridges. It's a totally different ballgame. We need to do more than just a slap on the wrist and forget about it.
Dan, if somebody came to school with a bottle of vodka, you would think that they would get in trouble.
But we wouldn't call the police on them, and we certainly wouldn't saddle them with an arrest and a conviction that will ruin their chances to get financial aid for college and to pursue a healthy career that will allow them to flourish and become a productive taxpaying citizen.
But I think there's a middle ground between we have arresting and putting them in prison, or just kind of giving them a card that's meaningless and saying go home. We need to do awareness, education. There's so much normalization because of legalization. This has gone so far, so fast, and we're not giving kids accurate information.
The only way to give that accurate information is when there's legalization. While we continue to promote the idea that cannabis is some dangerous drug that needs to be prohibited at the risk of jail and prison for young people, we give them misinformation, give them accurate information about their developing brains, and you see young people make healthier decisions in the states that are legal.
We wouldn't legalize heroin to give kids accurate information about heroin, though. But we don't need to do that in order to give them accurate info.
We've got a statement from the New York City Department of Education. They say, New York City is the safest big city in America because of the work of our New York City police officers, including those in our schools charged with deciding how to appropriately handle kids smoking pot. It is this smart discretion of New York City police officers that has fueled a 29% reduction in crime in our schools. Well, you know, if you don't consider possession of marijuana a problem, a crime, no wonder the laws are going
to State very soon.
Well, actually, what happens is even when you don't, it's a crime, but you have public use has skyrocketed. 611 calls in New York City. Everyone is complaining because of the smell. This is not a good environment for schools. Again, we don't need to legalize something to educate kids about it. That doesn't make any sense.
But Dan, right now in the United States, the majority of Americans are for legalization of pot.
That's right. A great and growing number are for legalization, not because more Americans are using cannabis, but because more Americans
more are using Interesting.
Because more Americans are looking at the laws regarding cannabis and are choosing not to saddle people with criminal penalties. You say there's a middle ground between criminal penalties and a slap on the wrist, these warning cards, but you don't ever suggest what it is. And when you're given the opportunity to support policies that would not allow for the big tobacco and big alcohol to enter marijuana, you don't support those policies.
Actually, the reason, well, hold on.
Vermont,
hold on. The reason why
you oppose Washington, D.C.
Well, one second. The reason why no state has legalized marijuana through the legislature, which is a really important point. No state has, hold on, is because we've offered, hold on, is because we've, well, they did not retail sales, is because we've offered,
you still oppose that position.
Hold on, we've offered a middle ground that says we don't want to saddle people with a criminal record and throw them in prison. I don't want to do that either, but we don't want to create big tobacco for pot, which is exactly what's happening.
But you oppose Washington, D.C., which avoided commercial sales, and you oppose the system in Vermont, which avoids commercial sales. When given the opportunity to support a policy that would avoid the outcome of big alcohol and big tobacco entering the cannabis space, your organization is nowhere to be found, Kevin.
The issue
Listen, the two of you did a very good job presenting your various points of views. Let's see what happens here in New York.
Thank you.
And elsewhere. All right, guys, thank you. Meanwhile, did a high school violate students' rights over their support